The nerve, the cheek, the sheer gall to steal my most detailed breakdown series. I'm kidding, of course. Cammy Shep's video is a great take at the trailer, and I really enjoyed watching his takes and opinions on what we saw. Saying that, his stuff was less about the trailer and more about the gameplay, which I will get around to. But today I'm taking him to school on the most detailed breakdown series and covering just the trailer, which is 1 minute 35 seconds, with a sizable frame-by-frame breakdown, covering every single tiny little detail that I noticed throughout the entirety of the trailer, which I will also do with the gameplay, and a lot of it are things that most of the other content creators haven't noticed, or at least haven't covered as far as I can tell, but may suggest to things we can expect, things that may need to be fixed, or any visual or environmental storytelling. Before we dive in, however, I think that the big thing that I'm noticing, and this was confirmed, positively reinforced at HCS Worlds at the end of October, is that this time around great effort and care is being taken to make things feel irrevocably Halo, but also inject as much realism into Halo's story as possible without sacrificing the feel of the game. Following the announcement, I had some great conversations with some of the folks at Halo Studios about the game and its development process, and while maintaining their secrecy and discretion about the specifics, the image they painted fills me with optimism, hope and confidence that some of CE's problems are being addressed and fixed. Now, don't get me wrong, Halo CE was a masterpiece, but it's not without its faults. No work of art truly is. So, enough of me waxing poetic, let's actually dive into the trailer of Halo Campaign Evolved and analyse it frame by frame to get a clearer picture of what the game may have in store for us in 2026. The first thing we notice is that as the Pelicans come flying in, Echo 419, or Fohammer's Pelicans' back door is open, and we can see Chief stood in the back. It's a little blurry, but he is there. Next, we notice that the jet wash is noticeable on the water's surface in the wake of the Pelicans flying in, which just broadcasts how powerful the Unreal Engine is for visuals. Next, we can see this crab on the beach and some insects flying nearby. That means there is evidently more wildlife on the Halo. And that's a positive development. There was originally planned to be quite a broad array of different wildlife on the Halo, but was cut due to time constraints and technical limitations. But there is footage out there showing thorn beasts and blind wolves. We can hope they make a reappearance. In fact, I even recall there being some concept art of engineers being present in Halo CE. And of course, they didn't really come back until Halo 3 ODST, so it would be quite good to see some of those on the ring as well. A big thing that I notice here is with the curvature of the ring up into the sky, we can see very large structures further up spin. Obviously, this is an artificial ring world, and having artificial structures, particularly massive ones, because, I mean, this is the Forerunners we're talking about, just adds to that kind of realism, so to speak, of the Halo ring, that it's a working, functional installation rather than just an arching ring up into the skybox. Also notice that there's a very clear terminator line between the biomes of the ring. We can see a very clear termination line between a snowy tundra and what looks to be more green, maybe jungle or meadows. Now obviously Halo CE did have a plentiful different supply of biomes that we could explore throughout the campaign, which was sorely lacking in Halo Infinite, unfortunately. But again, it just adds to the ambience of that background presence of the ring. And at least in comparison to Halo CE and Halo CE Anniversary, the relative position of Threshold has moved. Now, Threshold is the gas giant around which the Halo is gravitationally kind of anchored. Seeing it looming in the sky in all of its majesty certainly paints a alien world kind of picture. Next, we get a first look at some of the Forerunner structures on the Sonic Cartographer Island, and the Forerunner structures are a little too clean and crisp for my liking, and the geometric identity of the Forerunner structures has been altered somewhat. Forerunner structures have always been monumental in scale and have been an interesting blend of brutalist features and extremely advanced materials and aesthetics. It often implements geometric and circular shapes in a cantilever kind of configuration to make these structures appear like they defy gravity. They were often grey, weathered, which conveys the fact that they are very ancient, and these structures have been on this ring, being affected by the inclement weather of the ring world for 100,000 years. It stands to reason that it's going to get grimy over time. This ultra clean stylization is a little far removed from what we come to expect from a Halo CE, and broadly any structure that's being weathered, that's in the elements, is going to get dirty, it's going to get gritty, it's going to get weathered. So having these things gleaming and shiny like they've been recently buffed to a high polish doesn't make a huge amount of sense. So I would like to see some of these external structures go back to that kind of more gritty, weathered appearance and keep it a little more in keeping with the design ethos and visual identity of Forerunner structures that we've grown accustomed to. Nothing that can't be fixed. But it's not a complete loss on Forerunner structures, because in the next scene we get the OG wall mural that has returned from Halo CE. It was replaced in Halo CE Anniversary with something, well, it just didn't have the same kind of feel to it. The lighting in these corridors is fabulous. The ray scattering on atmospheric haze is beautiful. There's a good use of darkness. The interior darkness and grittiness and griminess is also more in keeping with expectation. In fact, generally speaking, the interior rooms of the Silent Cartographer match my expectations of what a Forerunner structure should look like almost perfectly, taken into account the graphical fidelity increase that we're seeing with it being a modern game. So that being carried over and echoed to the external structures makes sense to me. Again, these are outside, they're weathered, they're going to be in the elements, they need to have that gritty, grimy, weathered look. I'm hoping the reason the external structures look this way is simply because it hasn't had that final pass of grit, grime and weathering yet, and is just kind of a placeholder, I hope. Moving on to the hologram in the map room itself, and this has been updated to be more of literally a three-dimensional holographic rather than the wireframe that it was back in Halo CE. Now this is a departure again from the expectation of Forerunner holographics that we've grown accustomed to for the Halo CE era, but it's not game breaking for me. Moving away from the wireframe and making these holographics a little more comprehensive again makes sense given the context of how advanced Forerunner technology is. It makes sense that their facilities would be able to kind of self-track and self-monitor to an extremely high level of fidelity. And this may even be positively reinforced by the fact that there are some rooms and areas within this holographic that appear orange in colour, possibly suggesting to them being breached or there being an unauthorised presence, such as the Covenant, in these areas, or perhaps that just these areas need maintenance. Again, that makes sense that these facilities would kind of self-track and self-administrate and self-regulate. Having just a wireframe with floating symbols, while kind of in keeping with that early 2000s aesthetic for sci-fi, doesn't make a huge amount of sense with how advanced the technology we're talking. Next we see the Forerunner structure in the cliff face, which much more closely matches the original, but it's still just too clean. There's not enough grime, there's not enough wear, there's not enough weathering. It's been 100,000 years after all. Nothing stays pristine for that long in inclement weather, so this ultra clean aesthetic needs to change. Again, it can be done very easily, it's a visual change, they've got plenty of time to do it, so again, I'm not immensely concerned about this. Next we get the introduction of the Gold Elite in the Silent Cartographer facility. The OG sword ignition sound is returned, beautiful, cannot fault that. It looks like the Halo Infinite-esque Elite. It's not identical, there are some differences from what I can see. The bodysuit of the Elite is slightly different, some of the textures are slightly different. And some of the detailing on the armor's surface is slightly different, which may indicate a boss fight, possibly. I'm not as bothered by the visual differences between this Gold Elite and the OG Gold Elite, Because the OG Elites were just the standard Elite model, but in a different colour. The Gold Elites were exactly the same models as the standard Blue Elites, the Elite Miners. They were just gold. That's it, and that was likely that way due to technical limitations. As far as I'm concerned, for my 2 cents on the subject, there's no real reason not to lean into design differences, other than for nostalgic reasons. Obviously, if it's all about nostalgia for you, I get it why the Gold Elite being different in appearance to kind of the standard Elite would bother you. I get that, and even the Elites throughout the rest of this trailer are different from the original Halo CE Elites. Again, I get that. It's a nostalgic removal from what you're expecting. I completely get it, but for me personally, it's really not that much of a problem. And after all, if this is kind of the Halo Infinite-esque, again, some differences, design of the Elites, this design was praised over Halo 4 and Halo 5's design of the Elites. Most people accepted that this Elite design was beautiful and was excellent, and the people liked it. So for me, it's a good design of Elite. Yes, it's different from nostalgic expectation, but for me, implementing it for Campaign Evolved just isn't as game-breaking or as much of a big deal as it appears to be to others, but I understand why it's that way for others. Also, just quickly, new music sounds fittingly epic. I'm unsure, I'm not familiar with this particular track, and I have every single Halo soundtrack. I'm not particularly familiar with this track, so I don't know if this is specifically trailer music that has been kind of chosen from, like stock trailer music, so to speak, for this, or if this is a new addition to Halo's score. If it's a new addition to Halo's score and they're kind of building out the Halo CE score and remastering and reworking it, that's going to be very interesting, and I'll be very interested to hear the differences between Halo CE's, Halo Campaign Evolved, and how they differ to Halo CE Anniversaries. We'll see.
I don't know what's going on with my lighting at the moment. That's not the same as it was before, but that's the same setting. That looks better. Whatever.
On these title screens, we notice the crosshatch pattern from Halo Reach is visible behind the text, which may be just a nice callback to Reach, but then it does appear to be the Reach-era physics engine, actually the Havoc engine of the Blam engine, bolted onto Unreal. But again, whether this is actually a causative effect or a throwback to Halo Reach is anyone's guess. It's nice to see the real-time reflections on Chief's armour, which isn't surprising given the visual fidelity granted by Unreal. Optical heatwave distortion effects on the thrusters is a little erratic and emanates from areas it really shouldn't be in this particular scene. It's a good additive touch of detail to this particular scene, but I'd like to see it maybe scaled back a little bit, or work to be a little bit more in line with expectations. Again, they have plenty of time, so the visual issues can probably be resolved or dialed back. Implementing nose cannons onto Pelicans adds some strategic significance to the Pelican, which was missing in Halo CE, and makes it more lore accurate in my opinion, and the strafing runs are very good to see. The shield grid patterns and particle effects on the Elites are really detailed, but could do with being dialed up to be more noticeable in lighter areas. In Halo CE, the shield flare from the Elites was very noticeable and was a good visual indication of damage being taken by your enemies. Nice little touch here, but Chief changes his grip on the AR for a buttstock melee to put more force behind the strike. Elite's hooves here are partially buried in the sand of the beach, something that has actually been in Halo for quite a while now, but not quite to this level of fidelity. A few of the needle rams here appear to be travelling lengthways, contrary to expectations. This is hopefully a visual issue that can be fixed with time. The Jackal shields could also do with being brightened up a little bit more, but again, their visual and particle effects are stunning. Touching on something that we were talking about earlier about trying to inject some realism into Halo, with the plasma pistols here you can actually see a plasma channel and or eddy current effects where the plasma round had once travelled, which I'm pretty sure it's not lens flare because these seem to be fixed in space. But when you're dealing with high temperature plasma, which is an ionized gas, they do create ionized channels through atmosphere. All of these elite plasma rifle shots are high, which means they're not hitting the Chief, which is really good because it shows us the real-time reflections on the gun on Chief's hands as these very bright projectiles move overhead. Same with the muzzle flare from the assault rifle. The AR compass points towards Threshold as local north, which makes sense because it's a nearby gravitational body, and the gravitational effects of Threshold would likely be very detectable by any electronic suite. Motion blur pops in and out during this grenade throw, but this can likely be a visual glitch that can be ironed out before the game's release. The sprint mechanic in this trailer is very obvious, and I did play the Silent Cartographer demo at HCS, and yes, sprint is in it, but I've since seen news that's updated that shows that sprint is actually toggleable, so you can choose to just turn it off if you see fit, which makes the argument, the debate between sprint in Halo belonging and not belonging, a complete non-issue. The needler ammo counter on the butt of the weapon is superfluous at this point. We have 3 very clear indications of the quantity of ammunition in the needler, both on the heads-up display, the quantity of needles sticking out of the bloody thing, and now we have this display on the back of the needler. It's over the top at this point. I wouldn't be against the ammo display on the back of the needler being removed, and to be quite honest, I wouldn't even be against the heads-up display of the Chief's armor not fully recognizing the ammunition. I mean, the functioning of the needler at this point in the Human Covenant War was still a mystery to the UNSC and ONI, so why the heads-up display of Mjolnir would be able to make sense of it is beyond me. Just having the visual cue of how many needles are sticking out of the thing is more than enough. Here we can see more plasma channels, so at this point it's definitely not lens flare as they are fixed in the air at points the plasma round recently travelled. This obeys physics. Ionization of the air as the plasma rounds pass through them would cause charged particles to gather into pockets like this. This is completely and utterly an understood phenomena in physics. It can be witnessed with ultra slow-mo footage of lightning strikes. After the actual bolt itself is dissipated, you can see pockets of ionized particles still glowing along the ionized channel the lightning bolt once travelled through. There's some more instances of motion blur effects popping in and out on the Elite's corpse here after being blown up, but again, these little issues can probably be ironed out. A nice little note here is that there's now a physical armature system that connects the Warthog to the Pelican's cargo bay. The Warthog's undercarriage now shows a drive shaft to the rear wheels and independent articulated and suspended gear trains to each wheel, with what appears to be a differential and variable gearbox for each wheel. The tyres of the Warthog are no longer gas bladder tyres, but are now airless tyres with voids designed to give the tyre the buoyancy of regular tyres but without losing too much torque to material flexion. The central hub of the wheel no longer spins, instead the tyre and the outer wheel hub spin around the central hub, suggesting a more complex bearing and gear system for driving each wheel. Assuming this scene is immediately after the Warthog is deployed by Foehammer, there are waterlogged tyre tracks already in the sand, which would suggest, while humanity have only just happened upon this island, someone in a wheeled vehicle has been here before the Chief and his complement of Marines. This could perhaps be an advanced recon team scoping out the island ahead of time, but could just as easily be that this scene was captured after a few attempts, in which case this speaks to the Unreal Engine's ability to map terrain alterations through player action over time. This could theoretically suggest that the engine could support the ability to follow tracks and other trail and tracking mechanisms. Not that I think that will play a major role in the gameplay, but it adds to the realism. There are shells and conches on the beach now, which adds to the life on the ring. These are male Kigyar. It will be interesting to see if females also make an appearance. The Warthog now has wing mirrors. Hunter's plasma cannons now spark with electricity when they fire several blasts without time to cool down in between. Camera movement during this Hunter melee attack suggests towards Chief's evasive ability. The camera jostle would line up with the Chief ducking and quickly stepping back and clear of the attack, not just camera shake due to proximity to the Hunter or taking a glancing blow. The second shot from Chief's Magnum strikes the lower point of the Hunter's back armour, which is also the origin point of the fractured armour plates that we then see ejected thereafter. However, the entire back unit doesn't fall away, just the parts that were actually shot, perhaps demonstrating that real-time damage is now a thing. A single Magnum shot to a Hunter's back is no longer an instant kill, and this is a good thing. This needle round winks in and out of existence. Again, probably something that could be fixed. Real-time surface reflections in this shot are particularly beautiful. They show plasma rounds reflected in the walls and floors, moving up and down the corridor. I've said it many times before, but this version of Halo is visually stunning. The Unreal Engine really does suit Halo's aesthetic, and the fact that it's still technically running on the Blam engine, stroke the Havoc engine, we've still got the physics. It's still going to feel like Halo, and I can personally attest to the fact that it does feel like Halo. That's a cool jump. The Marines being thrown around in their harnesses while Chief stands completely still visually reinforces the Chief's sheer strength and unshakable nature. His grip strength, magnetic boots, half-ton weight and sheer muscle strength are more than he needs to keep himself completely still. And that really broadly concludes the 1 minute 35 second trailer, broken down kind of frame by frame. There are some interesting things to note here. I mean, visually, it's stunning. I think that's just a given. I don't think anybody who can watch this, even if you don't like the direction that this is going, I think you have to agree it is visually stunning. I was quite interested by the fact that the bullet that the Chief shot that hit the back of the Hunter that caused damaged plates to fall away, but not the entire back plate, seems to suggest towards real-time damage being a thing. I mean, that's going to be an awesome thing to see in and of itself. I know staged destruction has been a thing in Halo for quite a long time. I think it's even been as far back as Halo 2. There's been sort of staged destruction with vehicles specifically, like as the Warthog takes more damage, it will lose a hubcap, it will lose a fender, it will lose its windshield, etc, until eventually it gets to a point where it blows up and it's unusable. But we haven't really seen that with character models, so to see that with particularly Hunters and other character models, it's a really cool thing. The physics that are at play with the plasma rounds being fired up and down corridors and there being arcs of electricity and ionized gases and pockets of ionized gases and just real-time reflection, it's just beautiful. Like following how close the real physics are in that regard is just phenomenal to see. And again, going back to what I said at the start of the video, one of the conversations I had at HCS was with Jeff Easterling, and he said one of the most enjoyable meetings, or one of the most enjoyable types of meetings that he's been involved in recently, is where the guys have been sat down talking about how particle physics and plasma would and should act in certain circumstances, and how they now have the visual fidelity and the power to be able to actually display that and utilize it and make it feel real, and it looks phenomenal. They've done phenomenal work. I'm certainly not as bothered by the slightly different elite design that some of the other content creators and some of the fans seem to have with it. It's just, for me personally, it's just really a non-issue. It says to me that the reason why the elites looked that way and there was only one type of elite armor, then they were just different colors, was due to technical limitations. You know, the hardware, the time they had, they're just different colors of the same character model. So leaning into the graphical fidelity and the power of the system that you now have to differentiate them more significantly on the battlefield, it's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. But I understand the nostalgic reasons as to why people would prefer a different elite model. I understand. Again, little things, little attention to details, like the armature system that's now on the Pelican that holds the Warthog in place. Just little bits of attention to detail like that just add to the realism and fidelity of what you're playing. Really fills me with hope on the direction of Halo Campaign Evolved. One of probably my more popular videos where I've ranted about problems in Halo before was the stupid bridge that connects the front end and the back end of the Pillar of Autumn, along with the lore scale problem where a longsword, if you actually measure up the size of a longsword and how big it is and how big the Pillar of Autumn is in the Maw, the longsword shouldn't be able to fit inside of the bay, the longsword bay, the hangar that's on the side of the Pillar of Autumn. It's the Pillar of Autumn's too small. These problems, this gives me confidence, especially with the concept art that we've seen, where the Pillar of Autumn is actually physically broken into two parts, and there's a Warthog jumping between the two of them. It's really filling me with optimism that little issues like this, little lore scale problems, little things that kind of, to most people, then they're a non-issue. But to people who are really attention focused, like or really detail focused, like myself, bother me. So yeah, this fills me with confidence that they seem to be addressing a lot of little niggly issues. Broadly, I'm in support of this trailer. I'm in support of many of the art directions. Not as keen on the overly clean aesthetic of the exterior Forerunner structures, but they seem to have nailed the gritty and grimy nature of the interiors. So if they could just copy that over to the outside, great. Like I said, Halo Studios are open to feedback, they're looking for feedback, and they have time to fix this. They have time to fix loads of things. So if you have a particular issue with something about this trailer or about the gameplay that I will be showcasing in my next video, obviously put it on social media. I think there's even a survey out there somewhere. I'll see if I can find it, and if I can, I'll put it in the link in the description down below. And have your say. Be respectful, but have your say, because they might get round to it. They might fix it. If there's enough people asking for these changes, they might do it, and then we get something that's just that much better. But really, I'm gonna hold off now on all of my full, unfiltered opinions until after I do the next video, where I will also gonna go through frame by frame, do the full 13 minutes of gameplay, and really break it down to the similar level of detail that I've done here today. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like, share it around, put it out far and wide, and yeah, this is shaping up to be something quite interesting. So yeah, until next time. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to tap that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Pop a comment down below on things you'd like me to cover in the future, or any thoughts on today's video. I'll just quickly take this opportunity to thank my patrons and YouTube supporters: Falcon X003, the singular Contender class Ancilla, Laser and Spartan 0137, two of the triumvirate of minds within the Metarch of my installation. My installation's monitors: Shane, Orion, Spartan 1029, 121 Esoteric Sight, Ashley and Sylphia. The creche of sub-monitors: Legion, Ryan, Labrat, Element Zero, J3, Mr. Keys, Gunslinger Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma and Tony. My fleet of Strato Sentinels, my most loyal of Enforcers, and every single one of the awesome individuals helping to support the channel over on Patreon. It really does help and allows me to keep doing what I do, and I can't thank you all enough. Huge shout to my Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members Balaz, Jimbo and Mori. Thank you for continuing to stand sentry over my installation from all threats metaphysical. And if you would like to help support the channel in a more visceral way, consider jumping aboard as a YouTube member or patron to earn tons of perks, merch and goodies along the way. Thank you again for watching. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.